Hey guys, welcome back to Supernatural Sessions, episode 6. My name's Brittany, and I'm so happy to have you here. I did take like 2 weeks off. I say we as in everybody, but Jeff, my husband, we got really sick, and I got the worst of it. I don't know if it was a sinus infection. I used to be really prone to them. As a kid, like I've had multiple surgeries for them. It was like my sinuses were burning. It was incredibly painful. And I had these horrible migraines, which I am prone to migraines, but it was so much worse. I couldn't focus on anything. And then after I was better, we got a puppy. I surprised Jeff with a puppy. It was the hardest secret I've ever kept. He goes to the bathroom a lot and he bites a lot, but he's very cute, very puppy, like full puppy mode. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll go ahead and insert a picture so you guys can see him. Let's dive in to our topic for the day. People all over the world have encountered small, mysterious creatures that they believe are gnomes. But before we get into some of the encounters, then we need to know what a gnome actually. Gnomes are small creatures with an inclination to earth. They are described as being only a few inches tall to a few feet. They originated in European and Norse traditions, and old legends talk about gnomes as miners and that they lived underground. But today it seems that the gnomes have come out. They came out of their tunnels and live in forests or help humans in their gardens. And most people have an idea when they hear the word gnome. That's greatly due to the garden business. Like if you go into a Hobby Lobby or even Target or any store that sells anything garden-like, you're going to see these cute little gnome garden decorations. These gnomes are small men with short arms and legs, and round cheeks and bellies. They have a light skin and white beards, large noses, and friendly smiles. They wear these bright colored tunics that are usually green, yellow, or blue with a wide belt and different colored leggings. But no gnome is a gnome without their cap. It's a tall, pointed cap that sits upon their head. And they have been known to look like this since the 1800s. However, this was not the original appearance of these magical creatures. The original appearance is actually quite different. Gnomes were originally small, ugly creatures that lived underground. They were wild and they didn't really like humans. And they lived underground, so they didn't really care about personal hygiene. The very first written account of a gnome talk about how they were reluctant to interact with humans and that they preferred living in burrows underground. These gnomes were associated with mines and wealth. They were incredibly intelligent, and not only about mining the earth, but also about wealth and how to manage money. Advice from a gnome was said to make any man rich. Today, gnomes are much more lighthearted. They no longer live underground in the dark mines, but they still enjoy their pranks. Gnomes can literally be found all over the world. Some early mentions of them even date back to ancient Greece. In Greek mythology, gnomes were believed to be earth elementals that were dwelling in the earth and guarding its treasures. There are actual earth elementals, like there's earth, fire, air, water, like the elements. And there are creatures or beings that represent those elements. And the earth ones are often referred to as gnomes, which are a little bit different. I have an entire video on my YouTube channel all about elementals, and how also another video about how to interact with elementals. So if you are interested in that, definitely go check that out. Anyways, the Romans had a type of gnome that was called a and these were household gods that would protect the home and the family. In Scandinavian folklore, gnomes were known as tomte, which are these small bearded creatures who lived in houses and barns. They are known to be helpful and protect the household from harm. In South America, gnomes are duendes, and they're these mischievous creatures who enjoy a good prank. You'll see that a lot among fairies, because gnomes do fall under the generalized term of fairies, and a lot of fairies like pranks. They like to play these little jokes that they think are funny, and you might not, but you might, who knows. Anyways, they're often seen wearing pointed hats and are said to live in forests and other natural areas. Nordic folklore has gnomes that are called nissi, and they're these small bearded creatures that live in barns, and they take care of farm animals. They're these protective spirits that bring good luck to the household. Nissi wear red caps, and they often carry a staff. In Sweden, it's actually common to leave a bowl of porridge for the Nissi on Christmas Eve. And this is just kind of like a thank you to them. And in Germany, the gnomes are called Gartenzwerg. Maybe I pronounced that right. Or garden dwarfs. And they protect gardens and they bring them luck. These creatures are small, bearded men who wear pointed hats and carry gardening tools. So very much like the gnomes that you see in stores. They look like the common garden gnome. And these are actually very popular in Germany and in German gardens. Germany is actually known for their production of garden gnomes. And there is even a garden gnome liberation front that claims to free gnomes from people's gardens. Some people believe that gnomes have magical powers. They can grant wishes and protect a home from evil spirits. They're said to be able to control the elements and can even create earthquakes if they're angered. They have this special connection to the earth, and they can travel through the earth as easily as we can walk through air or a fish swimming in water. To this day, they're believed to enrich the soil that makes vegetables and flowers flourish. It's said that they can talk and that they even have a knack for clever jokes and riddles, but there are some gnomes that don't have that ability to communicate with us. Gnomes were first introduced by Paracelsus, who was this 16th century alchemist, and he genuinely believed that these magical creatures existed and that they were earth elementals. For the next 3 centuries, gnomes would be talked about by alchemists and obscure mythological scholars. By the 19th century, that is when gnomes became more publicly known. Originally, they were the opposite of fairies, were thought to be these beautiful beings. They were graceful, but gnomes were ugly. They were earthly and backwards creatures. But by the end of the century, the public would embrace gnomes. They would start being mentioned in children's books, and garden gnomes were being mass produced. But despite being a beloved garden decoration, they're actually banned from a lot of gardening competitions. They're considered inelegant and childish. Not everybody agrees with this though, so it's a lot of back and forth. Gnomes actually get gnome napped from gardens. So originally this was by people that you knew. It was by family or friends, and they would take your gnome and they would take it on like vacation, and they would snap pictures of it in these different locations, and then they would return the gnome with the pictures. Nowadays though, it's a little bit more devious. Strangers will straight up steal the gnome, and this has led to charges of breaking and entering. Gnomes are also associated with winter, which I kind of find strange because I feel like gardening is more like a spring and summer thing. Winter, not a lot of plants grow. So for the fact that they bring such good luck and prosperity to your garden, but they're associated with winter is a little strange for me. But winter is when they will go underground and hibernate. There's also said to be a king of the gnome race, and his name is Gob, and he rules the gnomes with his magic sword. He's also said to have influenced sadness among humans. If that was a joke, I really find it funny. Like, They can take sadness back. Today, gnomes are very beloved, and there's places around the world that even celebrates them. In Germany, there is this gnome festival, which is held every year in the town of Bad Grund. The festival includes a parade and live music and traditional foods and drinks. And in Sweden, there is Tomtebloss, and this festival is held on Christmas Eve. This celebrates the Tomte, which is the Scandinavian gnome. It includes lighting candles and singing traditional songs. In England, there's even a society that is working to preserve gnome habitats and actually educate visitors on the creatures. So like they firmly believe in the creature, the gnome, like the magical, mystical being. They're called the Gnome Reserve and Wildflower Garden. And there's actually a gnome museum in Austria that has a collection of gnome-related artifacts, which include paintings, sculptures, and books. So now that you know all about gnomes, let's get into the sightings. On September 23rd, 1979, half a dozen primary school children would go for an evening walk in Wallington Park in Nottingham, and a number of these children would see 30 small cars, each with a gnome driver and passenger. The encounter lasted about 15 minutes, and it's said that the gnome cars chased them around the park. The kids would eventually escape onto the surrounding streets where the gnomes would not follow them. Imagine being chased by like little people, these little creatures that you have no idea who they are, and these little cars. That would be hilarious and intriguing and terrifying all at the same time. Okay, let's start with the encounter. There were 6 to 8 kids. There are some accounts of the story where it says there's only 3 to 4, but for the most part, it's said like that there were 6 to 8. The kids would meet at about 8 o'clock. They wandered about a mile from their homes and would meet at Margaret Glenbott Secondary Modern School. So they would go into by one of the northern entrances. The park was officially closed. I know that a lot of parks close at night, so technically they were trespassing, but not the main part of the story. The children wandered across one of the lush fields in the parks, and they came to a little bit of fenced in woodland. This area was known by local kids as the swamps. The park authorities didn't want anyone in this area. That is why there was a fence. But some of the children decided to go through a hole that was in the fence. I would probably be one of those children, honestly. And they went into the marshy woodland. It said that 4 went in: Andrew, Patrick, Angela, and Rosie. These were the older members of the group. The children started to see movement in the treetops, and then the gnome cars appeared and started chasing them. Yeah. Does Daddy know you're awake? Come here.
Yeah, they woke up.
Okay, well, can you let Daddy know? The 2 boys would fall into a marsh. She came up and then opened the door. Okay. The 2 boys fell into the marsh. In one account, the gnomes dropped onto their back. In another, they drove them into the mud. Anyways, the 4 kids ran back to the other kids, and 2 of the kids were caked in mud, according to the younger kids. The older kids would tell the younger kids what they just seen, and the younger kids were like, yeah, okay. But at this point, the gnome cars emerged from out of the swamp and came after all of the kids. So the children ran out and the gnomes stopped. They didn't want to chase them onto the street. So this night it was weak crescent moon in the sky. So the children probably couldn't see very well because there wouldn't have been a lot of light. 3 of the children would be interviewed about what they had seen in the swamps. Their descriptions were remarkably detailed. They talked about the color of the beards and the clothes. They were trousers with patches. They talked about the hats the gnomes wore and the colors of the cars. They said that there were 30 cars with 60 gnomes. And all 3 kids repeated the exact numbers. Both the headmaster, who asked the questions in the transcript, Robin Aldridge, and Marjorie Johnson in her report did say that the lack of light was concerning regarding the details of the encounter. The headmaster even asked the children how they had seen these things because of the lack of light. Patrick said that the gnomes glowed in the dark. They just showed up. And Andrew said that there was a light in the trees. Marjorie Johnson, who believed the account, insisted that fairies have their own light and can be seen in the dark. This park has had several fairy encounters though, and several are associated with the grounds. About at least 10 relevant encounters. It also is important to note that the children did claim to have seen these gnomes again, which was also at nighttime. So is it possible that these creatures have little vehicles that they can drive around? I mean, I don't think that would be a shock that we are the only creatures that developed a mode of transportation, especially when gnomes are said to be so intelligent. And maybe there's another reason behind that fence. Why there is a fence there. Let me know what you guys think about this encounter, and let's dive into a couple more. So these ones are ones that I found on Reddit. And the first one says, I have chills down my spine writing this. This memory has been rooted in my head ever since I've been about 8 years old. This happened in Cox's Cave, Newfoundland, on the way to my grandfather's cabin, which was located in a little now ghost town called Breaks Cove, which was once inhabited many years ago. I was with my grandfather, mother, and brother. We were in my grandfather's little boat going to my grandfather's cabin, which was only accessible by boat when the tide was high and accessible by walking the saltwater shore when the tides were low. As we were floating along the saltwater, I caught a glimpse of a gnome looking elf thing. It looked almost identical to the typical gnome standing on the rocky shore in a naturally made cave. I can't remember exactly what he was wearing. It seemed like a red checkered jacket and a pointy hat. And he looked just curious and stared as we went along the water. All I could do was stare. I couldn't get my eyes off him. Something about it was just so confusing, and I really couldn't comprehend what I was looking at. But I didn't say anything to my mother and grandfather until we passed. When I finally brought it up, they just laughed and made me feel stupid for even bringing it up, so I eventually let it go. Hate that so much. I can't imagine, like I've been laughed at by my encounters. Like I'm telling somebody about my encounters and they will just laugh at me, but they didn't experience it. It's fine if you don't believe this, but this is my truth. And you know, what gives you the right to laugh at my uncomfortability or my vulnerability with sharing this story with you? And especially when it's a kid. When we came back to the cabin, I looked for it again, only to be disappointed to not have found it. I know what I saw. I've never seen a ghost or anything close, but I know I saw an elf or gnome that day. If you look up Cox's Cave Trail on Google, you can actually see the exact shore I saw the gnome on. The picture is overlooking a steep set of stairs, and they did include a picture, which I will include in this if you're watching on YouTube. And then this is the last encounter. This person had found multiple encounters and they had included it in their Reddit post, but they say there have been numerous sightings of gnomes throughout history, but the authorities have done their best to cover it up and discredit anyone who speaks out. I think people have become more accepting to people who believe in other things and who are spiritual. And I don't just mean like Christian based, but spiritual in other senses. And I do think that the world in a whole has become much more accepting than we even were like 10 years ago. But it is strange to me that there's all these accounts that people are seeing these things, people are, you know, interacting with these things, and even dating incredibly far back when there was no internet, there was no ways to really connect with people of other cultures, and these people were seeing essentially the same things. So there has to be some truth in it somewhere. Anyways, it says in 1911, a man named James Anderson reported seeing a group of small humanoid creatures in his garden. He described them as no more than a foot tall, with long beards and pointed hats. Anderson said that they spoke to him in a language he couldn't understand and then disappeared. The next sighting occurred in 1918 when a woman named Lois Johnson claimed to have seen a group of gnomes in a forested area near her home. She said that they were digging in the ground and appeared to be searching for something. When she approached them, they ran away and disappeared into the trees. The last reported conversation with gnomes occurred in 1937, when a farmer named Marcel David claimed to have spoken to a group of them. After these incidents, sightings of gnomes became less frequent and were only seen faintly from a distance. Some people have reported seeing them in gardens or forests, but they always disappeared before anyone can get a good look at them. So this person, they firmly believe that it's the authorities. I wouldn't really say the authorities. I don't think the cops are hiding anything. I don't really think that I'm sure they're hiding things, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't think they're hiding gnomes. Even like FBI, I think that there might be like an entirely different organization that is just designed for this. And if there is, I would love to work there. Like, if you are constantly interacting with these beings in a positive manner, of course, I would love to work there. But I also do genuinely believe that one day we are going to need to interact with these creatures. That one day we are going to coexist with these creatures once again. And I don't know, I have such a strong feeling about that. Maybe I'm crazy, who knows? But that is just firmly what I believe. My mom's favorite thing was gnomes, and that is basically why I wanted to look into them so badly. Anytime I see a gnome now, I instantly think of her. Or anytime I see anything Coca-Cola, I think of my dad because he was obsessed with that. For those of you that don't know, my parents passed. So these things mean a lot to me. And mythological world so much. I do genuinely believe they're out there. If you have any paranormal experiences that you would like to share with me, I would love to hear them. And I want to share more listener stories on my podcast. So if you're interested in that, then you can go ahead and email me at supernaturalsessionspodcast@gmail.com. Please email me. Like, I love hearing other people's stories. No judgment. I will probably believe you no matter what you send me because I wasn't there to experience it. So who am I to say that it didn't exist? And I've had my own experiences that make me believe these things are out there. So go ahead and send those to me. Also, if you want more paranormal, mythological content and also paranormal investigations, then go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please this 5 stars and make sure you're subscribed or following it and leave some sort of comment. If you're over on YouTube, then please like and subscribe and comment. Just doing those things helps expand my channel so much, expands my podcast. And I really want to build a community that believes in this stuff or is interested in this stuff and doesn't knock other people for being that way. So if you feel the same way, make sure to do those things. And until the next episode, stay spooky.